Madam, I am extremely grateful to the honourable members who have spoken at length on this bill. I may just add one observation with regard to a suggestion made by several members. What is the hurry and what is the urgency? Why should it not go to a committee? This idea was first conceived by the UPA in 2009. It's 7 years since then. And except for some questions with regard to privacy and disclosure of information which have been raised, which I will just answer, most speakers have actually supported this bill. Madam, this gives us an opportunity to really analyze to ourselves, and all of us, including myself, may be responsible for it, that a bill, the principal purpose of which is to empower the state to distribute the resource of the state to the deserving people, save revenue so that it doesn't go to undeserving people, and a bill on which there is almost a near consensus, barring one or two discordant voices. It must take us 7 years before we can legislate. And we have already gone through in some form or the other through the committee process also. The fact that we have gone through 7 years itself is a good reason that now enough is enough, we must go ahead and pass this bill. The effect is going to be that both the central government and the state governments are going to save thousands of crores of rupees after having serviced and served the poor people, and these thousands that they will save from the undeserving people are further resources which can go to the advantage of serving those poor people. So there is an element of urgency as far as this bill is concerned. Madam, the speakers from the Congress party have raised several issues. I'll just deal with some of the important ones. In substance, I found that there was no principal objection to the idea of Aadhaar. After all, it was the Congress party which conceived of it. They perceived of it in a bill which provided for the establishment of an authority, and they gave this idea of a unique identity. What we will do with that unique identity number, the bill did not speak of it. So that there shall be a unique identity authority, it will issue an Aadhaar number, there will be biometrics. So identification and a personality of each individual and his special features will be identified. But to what purpose it will be put to use, the bill did not conceive of that. And that is probably the reason that members had apprehensions. Why do you want this? The courts had apprehensions, the citizens' groups had apprehension, and this whole debate of secrecy and privacy arose. Learning from that experience, we have improved upon that idea. And the improved upon that idea is that the principal purpose of this bill, as I said, the focus of this bill is now shifted. Because at the end of the day, what are subsidies? Subsidies is an amount which a government gives from its own revenues to service the poor and vulnerable in the section of the people. But the problem with subsidies is that it can become an unquantified amount which is given to an unidentifiable section of people. Till a few months ago, if not a year or two ago, people like me were also receiving an LPG subsidy. If I go and buy kerosene, I am entitled to a subsidy. Every time I filled up petrol in my car 2 years, 3 years ago, I was getting a subsidy from the state. Every time I buy diesel, I was getting a subsidy. Now the question which arises is, are people like me who are completely undeserving in this matter, should even 1 rupee of the state be spent on me, or should it be spent on the poor and the vulnerable? The answer is very clear, it should be spent on the poor and vulnerable. And therefore, borrowing from the UPA idea of having a unique identity, We have shifted the focus, and the focus is that subsidies must now be targeted. Nobody should be able to get it twice over or 4 times over. You should be able to identify the people who get it, and those people in a targeted manner must get the benefit, and those who are undeserving must be phased out. The government and the state will save resources, and these resources must further be spent for the welfare of those people itself who deserve it. That's the principal object. Therefore, why it becomes a money bill in our submission, that is for the Honourable Speaker to take a final view, that under Article 110C, any money going into the Consolidated Fund of India or coming out of Consolidated Fund of India, any legislation that deals with it is substantially a money bill. Now the question was, if there is an additional machinery which is being created for enforcement of that, honourable predecessor speakers have taken a view, that machinery is incidentally created. The principal purpose is the spending of the money and the targeting of that money in a particular manner. So it doesn't lose its character as a money bill. And if it's a money bill, it must follow the procedure of a money bill. Now, if the Congress party wanted the credit that we gave birth to this idea and they want a copyright on this idea, I give them the benefit of that copyright. That should be a good reason that you must support this bill. So don't oppose a bill, don't even delay a bill which you say you gave birth to. It's a coincidence of history that we have the opportunity and the privilege of finally being put into government. But any government, you are also in power in several states. It will benefit you in those states. After all, aren't Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, TRS members have said that how effectively they are using this instrument. TDP has said how effectively they are using this instrumentality. If from West Bengal to Karnataka, it is going to help each and every state. Now, I may just, our idea is not to bypass money bills as a rule, whether it's a budget or the railway budget. Money bills have a particular procedure in the Constitution. You don't bypass a particular house. It goes to that house. It is discussed in that house. And that house votes upon it in some bills. It gives its advice or suggestions as far as money bills are concerned. You said that we scrapped the Unique Identity Authority and Mr. Nilekani was forced to go out. We did not scrap the authority. We did not request him to go out. In fact, much before we were voted to power, he decided to join the Congress party and contest as your candidate. So he has to resign from a public office. So you may kindly correct your facts as far as that is concerned. And I must say, to the credit of Mr. Nilekani, who struggled for 5 years to see this come through, and today at least he's having the last laugh. He's writing articles and saying at least somebody has accepted my idea, and this is going to be good for the system. So if you wanted his certificate, I think you already have it as far as this bill is concerned. 2-3 other points which have been made. How do we get everybody to join? 97% of the adults are already members. Children have to join in a big way. That will take some time. On an average, every day, 5 to 7 lakh people are joining this. And therefore, time is not very far away where everybody will join in. The honourable member said, why have you said a person is entitled to? This is exactly the language which was there in the original UID bill also. You entitle a person, and that entitlement enables him to seek, but for the purpose, if he wants a benefit, then he needs to produce this as an identity. Now the principal issue is privacy or security going to be affected? I am not getting into this privacy debate which is on the earlier bill before the Supreme Court, because a conservative Supreme Court in the 1950s and 60s had said that privacy is not a fundamental right. Subsequently, some judges took a view it is a fundamental right. They will resolve that legal issue. But if you see, we have added a whole chapter which is chapter 6. And chapter 6 deals with secrecy and confidentiality of information. Very different from what it was in the earlier bill. The authority shall ensure secrecy, identity of information and authentication of individuals. Then the whole procedure is given. Then if you see section 8, some data can be shared with the consent of the individual. But biometrics cannot be shared even with his consent. So if a person says my biometrics may be given to X, Y or Z, it can't be shared. So we have taken a protection against that provision. Section 29 then puts a restriction on sharing of biometrics. No core biometric collected under this Act shall be shared with anyone for any reason whatsoever. So there is a complete protection as far as biometric secrecy is concerned. Mr. Satpathy wanted to know whether DNA can be a part of it. The Act doesn't say so. Regulations can expand it, but if ever the regulations expanded it, the regulations will have to be tabled here. And this House will have the right then to accept those regulations or not, because there is a procedure by which there is a parliamentary control over regulations itself. Then can it be used? Mr. Owaisi is not here. It will be used, we cease to, because these days, madam, it's become very fashionable that any action takes place in a college or somewhere, you say democracy is in danger. We are becoming a police state. Why are we becoming a police state? Because we are having information about our own people. So we become a police state. Now, who will it be shared with? Section 29(3) says, no identity information available with the requesting entity shall be used for any purpose other than the one specified to the individual at the time of submitting any identity information for authentication. So information can't be used for any purpose. Then the biometric shall be stored in a particular manner that you create firewalls around it so that there is no leakage which is possible. Now, what if a court wants it? I can't bar the powers of courts. So if the court wants it, it has to be somebody above a district judge who has to ask for that information. Now you mentioned that is there going to be a review? The disclosure of information, if it is to be made for some purpose, there will be a specially directed joint secretary-like officer, and every decision he takes will be reviewed by a committee headed by the cabinet secretary, exactly the suggestion that you had made. So that is also protected for. So there is a lot of care which has been taken to make sure that information doesn't get leaked out as far as informants are concerned. The honourable member from Shiv Sena, Mr. Sawant, wanted to know as to what is going to be the impact as far as citizenship is concerned. Section 9 itself mentions very clearly in this bill that since it applies to residents, it is clear there is a declaration in law. It does not confer any rights of citizenship on a person of whom the Aadhaar card is there. The law itself clearly states that. Section 57, can this be used, the Aadhaar card number be used by any other authorities? I can't bar other authorities. For instance, if the RBI were to have under its act a provision that for a bank account you need a card, or for an admission to a government college you need a card for identity, or to establish some other proof you need a card, the Act doesn't debar that itself. Private agencies at times take thumb impressions, etc. Even those have been protected as secret information under this Act. So even a private agency which takes it cannot leak it out. So the question of the fear which the honourable member Mr. Satpathy had, that it can be used for some form of ethnic cleansing and so on, I don't think is correct. Mr. Owaisi mentioned a point that if disclosures are to be made only on grounds of national security is not defined. I don't think there is any legislation in India which defines national security. Threats to national security can vary from time to time. The National Security Act didn't define what national security is. But it's for courts then to interpret whether the user for national security in liberal democracies like England, the word national security is not defined under any act. But everybody in the given context understands what national security is. I only want to inform this House that the purpose of this is not to identify people for some collateral purpose, but to make sure that the benefits of public revenue reach the right people. That's the only purpose of this Act at present, and therefore, Madam, I commend this bill to this House for acceptance.
example, we celebrated Women's Day. The Supreme Court had said allowed dance bars in Mumbai. And the Supreme Court also said that people who patronize dance bars, their right to privacy will be protected. It is amazing. People who patronize dance bars, their privacy will be protected. But what about this? What about the Indians? What about people who are outside?